This training is going to focus on Google Forms, but really focusing in on how we're using Google Forms in the classroom, right? There's a ton of features and it's very robust, but if we're not using this in a way that's useful to us, that drives instruction, we're not hitting the mark. So coronavirus, right? COVID-19 has forced change in all of our normal systems. We know this, okay? But if you have children at home, you also know that some things never change, okay? So Olaf says some things never change, and he's right about that. Technology. We still are reliant on technology, even more so, I guess, with COVID, since students are in person, they're at home. It's difficult to keep track of. And now we're using all these new technological tools that we haven't before. Kids still have to graduate. They still have to be successful, right? And what that looks like may be different, but we're still working towards the same goals. Systems-based approaches, right? Good classroom management, good classroom systems are still required. There's still something you need to do, whether we're in person or whether you're doing distance learning. The problem is we have to redevelop all these systems for our distance learning students. We still have to watch students closely, right? And when we look at students, you know, this is another thing that hasn't changed, but I love this quote. The only thing constant in education is change itself. I'm sure you've heard of that quote before. And I got another Olaf jiffy here. So when you're looking at students in person and you look over at them, you might see something like that. And now while some things don't change, there are a lot of things that do, right? So now you might be looking at a student and see something like this, right? Where they're not there. They could be doing anything. You can't see them, you can't hear them. I know for myself, I'm constantly reminding students, hey, unmute yourself. Hey, can I see you when I'm talking to them? Just so I can, you know, make that connection with them. This is me before we went out for COVID with my MacBook. I loved it. This is how I feel now. Raise your hand if you can empathize with this. I can empathize with this. And this is, you know, I love technology. I'm a tech guy. And there's just something about being on a computer all day. You know what? It's why I got into this profession, because I like people, right? I love people. And I don't want to be on a computer all day. But this is the world we live in now. So we got to adapt, we got to make changes, and we got to make it work. So advanced Google Forms. One thing to keep in mind when we're working with Google, any sort of platform, you really want to focus on the user friendliness. It's very important for students. Students are often using different devices. They're sharing devices, okay? They're using mobile phones. They're not on a laptop. They're on an old desktop that, you know, doesn't connect to the apps that you need it to. So students are coming from very different situations. So as we create products for them to work on at home, we need to be cognizant of that and aware of that so that we can tailor the formatting and other structural elements so that it's user-friendly for the students and they can access it. I'm going to keep bringing this up as I show you examples and kind of relate them back to this idea. Another idea that's really important with distance learning is digital prompting, okay? When we're in a classroom and Johnny is off task, it's very easy for us to say, hey, Johnny, stop doing what you're doing, do your work. But when they're home, that prompting isn't there. That formative assessment of student actions and behaviors and work isn't there because you're not there with them. So you're relying on looking at a Google form or whatever the platform is after the fact. So you're not seeing the student make the mistakes right there. Like math, I see Ms. Chico nodding her head. Math is key. They get the wrong answer. You don't know where the breakdown was. You have to see them do it, right? So there's something to keep in mind with digital learning is that you have to prompt students and come up with ways to prompt students without you physically being there, all right? So that's another theme that I'm gonna keep referring back to as I show you these examples of what I do with Google Forms. So the first one's called Automastery. Automastery is a Chrome extension. It's activated through the district, so you can download it. I have presented on this before. This is something, keep in mind also, all these things I'm telling you about, I've been using for at least a year or more, all right? So I'm not giving you stuff that I'm just pulling out and going, hey, this would be great, do this. This is what I use in my classroom every day. And ironically, now I don't because we don't have access to computers in the classroom. So I have all these things built out for distance learners that I had already created, but now I'm kind of going backwards and using paper in the classroom. And I know you guys can relate to that. So Automastery, all this is basically, it sets up a threshold with 3 different categories based on their score. So when you create a Google form, all you're gonna do is set those thresholds. So if let's say I give them a quiz or assignment or whatever, I say, okay, if they get a score of a 10, that's perfect. They're then going to get pushed out an assignment based on their response. It's all automated. So I get a 10 out of 10, great. I get pushed out the flipped video lesson for next week. And my responsibility is to watch that lesson and be prepared for next week. If I got between a 6 and a 9, okay, well, then I get this follow-up practice assignment, right? If I get between a 0 and a 5, I get a prompt that it's like, yo, you got to meet with the teacher, or I have like a beginner level modified assignment for them. Back to the digital prompting thing. The reason why this is so important is because they do the assignment and they get no feedback until they come see you, which might be 5 days from now. Okay? Automastery is going to track them based on their performance so that you're not wasting all this time and then seeing them next week and saying, hey, you know, remember last Monday when you did this assignment, you messed up on this, you messed up on that. They didn't remember that assignment. Automastery is going to allow them to have new assignments pushed out to them or review things that they don't understand. And again, this is all without the teacher in this process because it's digital. You're not there. So you have to set up systems to manage that prompting and support that's automated. All right, so I want to show you a couple examples of what I'm talking about here. Whoops. All right, I'm going to leave the present mode real quick just because I have to click on the links. Oops. So this might be an example of something you get like as a beginner assignment for this particular thing. So these are their class notes, but what I did was I created support materials, right? So I used Smart Notebook or Google Slides to sit there and highlight, underline important information. So as a beginner student, you know, this is the information they received in class that relates directly to the question that they had to answer in the exit slip or whatever it is you're using. They answer that question, they get it wrong. Okay, so now they're pushed to this assignment where it reviews all those concepts, and then at the end, it prompts them with a link to go back and retake it. Okay? Now also keep in mind, look here. So, you know, you have to add support. You can't just put in there, oh, you got it all wrong, try again. How are the kids going to learn what they did wrong with you not there? So you have to think about these things as you're planning. And I know this is a lot of work. So I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. It's a lot of work. But what I can say is that once it's built, your life becomes so easy because a lot of these things are automated and you have these support. I use this sports all the time just when I'm sharing with students in person even because it's already built. Right, so then they have a link to go back to the quiz and retake it. Now this is in a Google Doc. So the way that Automastery works, I'll just show you an overview of that. You kind of get the idea of how this is set up. I'm sorry, the name of this is Automastery? It's called Automastery, yes. Really? I'm able to download it. So I'll look into that and find out about that.
No, it's temporarily bound. You go to the website, it says it's temporarily unavailable for install because of changes in the requirements for published payouts.
So that's related to what was going on yesterday, maybe?
I don't know.
Okay. So people at home or virtually just know that Ms. Laper is just informing us that to download Google, the Google extension for Automastery, it's not working for some reason. It's got some weird error message. Okay, so just be advised. I'm going to give you an overview of what this looked like within there. Okay, so here's your add-ons within Google Forms. Did Mr. Lehane cover add-ons in general? No? Okay, so when you use a Google Form add-on or an add-on within different Google Suite platform, you're gonna have an add-on button. This is the only add-on that I like to use here, okay? Documenter, but Automastery. So now what happens is I'm gonna configure this. When I click configure, it's gonna bring up these options, okay? This is where I'm gonna set my thresholds, okay? I can make a completion message. And then here's where I'm gonna link in the different assignments. Now I could link in another Google form. I could link a video link. I could link a Google Doc link like the example you saw. I can link any number of things I want as long as it's a web link. I can post it in there. And when students finish this assignment, based on their score, they have an email that is forwarded to them with the link that correlates to what their score was. Ms. Watkins. That means you don't have any add-ons added to Google Forms at this time. So once you add one, you'll see that button and you'll be able to access. See, I only have 2 downloaded. I use Automastery And then I got Doc Appender. I don't even use this, but I downloaded it at some point, so it's there. So what I do is I just go to Google and I type in the name of the extension. So Automastery Chrome extension, and then it links you to where you can download that, okay? The Chrome extension store is where you download them from. But for some reason, sometimes when I'm searching up different extensions, like and I type it into the extension store, it doesn't show up. When I type it into Google, it shows up immediately. I don't know what the deal is with that, but yeah, my preferred way is I just type the extension name into Google, and then it brings me right to that link to download. Okay. All right, so another example here. I'll show you on Mastery. So this is an example of a Mastery, right? So the student scores very high on it. This might be an extension lesson, right? So the next lesson we're going to be doing is about Dunkirk. So I'm giving them the reading ahead of time, okay? For the other two groups that didn't perform to the level that I needed them to, they're going to be doing other assignments, which either review, spiral back through the concepts they need to be successful. And if they are successful, it pushes them to the next thing. Again, these are just ideas of how you could use Automastery, and everyone's class is going to be different. Okay, this is just another example, same thing. I'm just using, and as I said, these are all things I've built out. So I have tons of examples. If you teach social studies, I have plenty of stuff to share with you. Okay, Mr. Rodriguez.
So it gives you this email with a link to it. Does it automatically take them there?
It does not automatically take them there. So what that means is part of your instructional practices with using this Chrome extension is, hey, you need to, after you finish the assignment, check your email. This is something that I've woven into my classroom procedures just in general of teaching students this digital citizenship and self-responsibility to check their email often. You know, I'm like, listen, teachers are going to try to reach out to you through your email. Automastery is going to send you links through your email. So I'd encourage you to do the same. Make email part of their everyday use. Cool vocabulary. Again, this is another just example of the same thing, Automastery. So you're setting the thresholds and you're linking that to assignments, videos, whatever it might be, okay? All right, so I heard Mr. Lehane bring this up briefly. He talked about using sections to navigate students through a Google form. So I'm gonna show you a way that I like to use sections to provide individualized and personalized pathways through wherever the assignment is, okay? So Automastery is a summative execution of the platform, right? So you finish the assignment and then boom, you get this, you get this, you get this, and everybody goes to their next assignment. You can also guide their pathway within the Google form itself, whether you're trying to, like Mr. Lehane said, go with distance learners and they have a second set of questions, right? That might be different from the in-person. The way I like to do it is similar though. I go question by question, item analysis with support. So here's what I mean by that. Students get a question, right? This is an exit sip, and I'll pull up the actual file so you can see what it kind of looks like on the teacher end of it. So they do a question. This is not working. Right, and the sections feature is how we do this. Now, why it's important? Because you can differentiate, individualize, and it automates. That's the key here, right? The theme I was talking about. Digital prompting needs to be automated because you're not there. So that's what's great about this. If they get the question right, awesome. Next question, moving on. If they get it wrong, it's going to push them to the same type of support document I was talking about earlier that I would use in Automastery, but this is related and specific to the one question. So in this example, we have a primary source document here from William McKinley. In the support, we have stuff from their notes with annotated markings on them for students to access. And we also have the document itself right there. Okay, with underlined important information. So the students get the question wrong, it gives them the document with highlighted important information, annotations, and also any other relevant information they might need that we talked about in class. So now they can review these materials, answer the same question again, will be there, and then it pushes them forward. Okay, so whether they get it right or wrong. So that's something to note that when you go into the your analytics for your Google form, you just got to be aware of that, right? So if you see that a student gets a question wrong, right? And then you got to look to the next item for the other section to see, okay, when their second attempt came up, did they get it wrong again? Or did they get it right? And that's going to be where you can sort of pull from when you're saying, listen, Johnny did this question twice and got it wrong twice, even with the support material. Okay, I got to pull Johnny because we have to have a conversation about this idea and this concept. Okay. All right, so let me show you an example of what this looks like from the back end. So basically, all you're doing is you're making your questions the same as you would before. And then what you're going to do is you go to the question, click on the dots, go to section based on answer. So then all you're going to do is you're going to say continue to the next section for any of the questions that were wrong. And the right question goes to section 3, which is the next question. Okay, section 2 in this case is the support materials. So if they answer correct, it pushes them right to 3. Right to 3, and they do the next question. If they answer it wrong, right, so any one of these choices, continue to next section, and the next section is a support section that relates directly to that question. So as students navigate through the Google form, they're receiving support that directly correlates to the content they're working on. So when they're home, they're getting it right there. Back to the concept of user friendliness, okay? Notice, all this stuff will be in the same Google Doc. If I'm at home on an Android cell phone that has poor service, you don't want students having to click links to open up multiple pages. Because once that starts happening, it's like, oh, I don't know what page I was on. Where's the video? I clicked back on this, it reloaded. So what I like to do is embed all my videos, all my support materials, all the things the students would need right in the Google form. Okay? The user friendliness of this increases greatly. Now, if I'm on a phone, everything's right there in the form. I just scroll down. Another strategy I would highly recommend is break it up into sections for the same exact reason. Kids are going to get overwhelmed. Break it down, chunk it. Okay, you can add the progress bar too. I think that's a great idea. I know students like that because they can kind of see how far they are through it, especially when there's many, many sections, right? Because they don't know when the end is. So they could be working through and go, oh, this is going to never end, right? So seeing the progress bar is great. Okay, so here's another couple examples of ways that I use Google Forms with that tracking, with Automastery, and then just other ideas of how you could use it. I see some things popping up here. We have a question. Now, does anybody in virtual need to answer a question? Sorry, I see people typing stuff, but I didn't read them. We all good? If you have a question, just unmute yourself. I can hear you in my earbud, okay? All right, so here's an example, right? This is more of a type of an instructional module. Right, so this is obviously about South Africa, Nelson Mandela. Kind of a side note, I like to add all the objectives and the standards right in the Google form. This is like for me as a teacher. So as I'm working through it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Got to make sure I include that. I highly doubt the kids are reading that at the top. But like I said, as a teacher, once you have all these different Google forms going, it's helpful to see, oh, this is the Google form for this standard. Okay, I know what I got to be putting in here. It just keeps me organized and it helps with my workflow. Right, so you got a video, you have some note materials, other videos, the support materials in here, right? So this be the type of thing that I'll give the students as a participation activity, a classwork type thing, where there's instruction built in, there's videos, there's support materials. Again, digital prompting. They have to do this work without you there. They have 5 minutes, right, in the beginning of class. Outside of that, they're kind of on their own. So it's important that you provide those digital prompts and support throughout. All right, so that's kind of more of an instructional type, and it'll go through different sections. Constructive response questions. So this is a new type of category for social studies where it's basically a DBQ, okay? But one of the ways that I provide the support directly within the document is I have the document, and they got to answer their DBQ question, okay? But also, there's a video here, okay? And now this, I'm not going to play it because I don't know if it's going to mess up with the recording here, but this video is a screencast that I did analyzing the document. So again, this is like as if though I'm there. If they don't understand the document, whatever I would say to a kid in person, that's what I recorded in that video, okay? Another note, keep your videos short because kids are gonna not watch the whole thing, right? So I try to keep them as short as I can. In this way, when students are working on this and they have no idea what the document's saying and they're very confused, they watch this video, and not only is it a support video about the document, it's the document they're working on. It is one-to-one correlation to the material they're doing in class. Oftentimes when we find things on YouTube, they're not specific to the exact skill and materials that we're using. And that could throw kids off. So I encourage you to make your own screencasts, keep them short, embed them within your Google form as your support, right? So that the kids can watch this video and have a good understanding of this document. This is a review module. So what I did here was, this is kind of like a end of year review. I took the entire curriculum and I just, using Automastery, built out the whole thing, unit by unit. So now I can just give this to kids and say, okay, go. They do the first review. Guess what? They score above what the threshold is. It pushes them to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, so on and so forth. And then it'll push them to different assignments based on whether or not, they score to a certain level. So this is kind of a review one. So I put in here tons of different videos, crash course videos. I don't require them to read these, to watch these, but it's just in there. I also use sim frames, right? So if you use sim strategies, these would be a great thing to add. Again, this is a frame and it's specific to this unit, right? So this is something we were doing in class. It's going to be familiar to students, and now they have it right there in the document. You could share this with them and have them open it up in a different window, but going back to that user friendliness, you want things embedded within Google Forms as much as possible to streamline their workflow, so they're not going on different pages. Now, if a kid has a computer at home, it's easy to navigate, right? But if they're working on a cell phone, those are the kids you need to be thinking about, right? Because they're going to be like, oh, I have to click off of this. How am I get back to the Google form? What if the window closes out? It can be a little bit complicated, okay? All right, some more frames, right? And again, so what I did was I combined all these support materials within. So now these support materials directly relate to information you need to answer question 1, right? So on and so forth. So they just go by section. So 1 through 4, right, has information that helps them answer it at the top. And it just goes section by section. It's telling me I got to answer it. But, all right, so that's just another example of a type of review module. And using Automastery, if they score high enough, it just pushes them to the next unit's review, okay? Similarly, what I've been doing for my assessments this year is I'm taking all these review things I built out last year and the year before, and I'm just modifying them to be our assessments for this year, since we're pretty much, doing most of our assessments digitally and working from home. Okay, so this has nothing to do with Google Forms, but I thought it was very important to bring up with COVID. Has anyone here used clickers before? Show hands. Nobody? Okay, Bruce. So I love clickers. Once I had computers in my room, I stopped using them because we were just on the laptops every day. However, clickers is awesome because it's socially distant, right? You could be in a classroom and you could hold up your clickers card, and I don't have to give you paper. I don't have to collect it. And I could still get real-time feedback on what your answers are. It's low tech. It only requires that the teacher has the phone, right? So if you have kids in your class that don't have a device, guess what? Clickers works, okay? And again, this gives you the real-time teacher feedback. Last year, when I was able to have computers in my room every single day, the kids would just complete the Google form, and I'd pull up the analytics right there, and I'd be able to review any concepts we needed based on those formative assessments or summative as an exit slip. But in this case, I could still accomplish that in a low-tech way that doesn't require that every kid has a device, and I could still get the same information that I need. So I would really highly recommend clickers. I'm going to be definitely using this big time. So writing labs. So this is kind of outside of Google Forms, but I think it's important to bring up when we're talking about writing. Okay, so let's say you have a writing prompt, right, where students are going to say whether Brutus was justified and they need to cite textual evidence. Okay, usually we expect kids to just rock and roll, see something like this. And oftentimes we get something like this. Okay, so with writing, we have to come up with strategies that are going to help us to help kids produce. Google is very effective for that, and it's awesome because it's free. It's a bargain. However, if we're not using it with a systems-based approach, it's not that effective. So one example of this is called data validation. It's great for updating contact information, collecting valid phone numbers and emails, and you could set length thresholds for responses that are short response or long answer responses. Okay, so here's what this is. Now I already created a contact sheet, which is in the presentation. So when that gets pushed out, you can just steal it, just make a copy of it. But to update parent info, right? I have a contact spreadsheet, and now what I was getting last year was I'd send this out, and if there was a missing number or they didn't put the @ symbol in the email, or they misspelled something, I would get this flawed data that was useless to me. So one of the strategies I worked to do around that is called response validation. Okay, so all you do is you click on the 3 dots, okay, on a given question. So this question, obviously, an example is phone number. Click on 3 dots, response validation. You click regular expression, okay, and then you would enter this code. Now, this looks crazy. I don't code, okay? I got this code simply by typing into Google, what's the regular expression code for Google for phone number, for email, okay? It's gonna give you that code. You take it, you paste it into the pattern field right there, and that's it. So now, when they give you a response of phone number, and it's not in this format of XXX, it will give them an error message and say, sorry, you need to enter your phone number in the following format. Which brings me to the next thing. You're gonna wanna add specific error messages, right? So with the email, for instance, same thing, regular expression, pattern, you're gonna type in or paste in the coding for that, which you can easily search up on YouTube. It is embedded in this slideshow, so you can get it from there as well. And then adding custom messages, right? So in this example, we can set the length. So for me in social studies, we do a lot of writing, right? And I don't want kids writing, nah. I want them to elaborate and write complete sentences. So I might set the length of characters. Keep in mind, this would include spaces, right? So when you're thinking about how many characters you want the response to be, keep that in mind, okay? And then you could add custom error messages, right? So in this case, it's sorry, you need to write more. In the other one, I would probably put something like, your email has to be in the format of whatever the format is. Same thing with the phone numbers. When they get this message, they know, oh, okay, I need to put my phone number in this format for it to accept it. You can also put directions for this within the question. I'll show you how to do that real quick. It's actually really, all you do is you click on the button and then click description. And then you can add a description for each question where you say, hey, when you enter your phone number, this is the format it has to be in. Okay? So that's kind of response validation. That's how you can set thresholds for length, right? So with writing assignments, you want to get more length with the assignment, you can set that threshold. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is called closing the feedback loop. So this is a concept that I use with writing with my students. And it's also a concept that relates to distance learning, okay? And what this really means is that we need to really think about how to close this feedback loop. And right now, the feedback loop is large. They come in on Tuesday, here's your assignment, go do it, I'll see you next week, right? You gotta tighten that feedback loop. How are we doing that? Digital prompting, right? Having support materials, having these Wednesdays where we can check in with students. That's another opportunity to provide feedback. Well, we gotta close the loop so that students are getting feedback on their performance and they're not going a week and a half without getting any sort of feedback from the teacher on the concepts and things that they're talking about in class. Now, the way I use this with writing is, and I meant to take a screenshot of this, but I forgot. So typically what I'll do with writing is this. You create an assignment for each student, okay? And they're gonna write their essay in that document. This is how you close the feedback loop with writing assignments. You open up every kid's assignment, okay? So the top of your bar is 1,000,000 tabs with every kid and their essay. And now during a writing lab, on Wednesdays as an example, or in class, you're gonna sit there and you just click each kid and you cycle through. So I go to Johnny, I look at it, hey, run-on sentence, fix this. I like what you said there, and you're adding comments. Click the next tab. And you cycle through all the kids. Now, raise your hand during writing assignments if you get this. I often have, when I'm in person, a bunch of kids that will do nothing, and then at the end it's like a blank page. And then I have other kids that will sit there with me the whole time and need me to spoon feed them. So this kind of solves both those problems. Because I'm saying, no, you don't come up to me. I will comment in your thing. Look for the comments there. And it also makes the other students accountable because they see you looking at it. They see you in there for the 5 seconds. And then they see you in there 2 minutes later for another 5, 10 seconds. And they're seeing you come into their document. And you are closing the feedback loop. You're providing feedback to a student on their writing before they give you a 5-paragraph essay. And you're like, oh, you got to retype all this. This doesn't make sense. And then they're like, well, I'm not doing that. You got to catch them early, right? So we can redirect them towards what we need them to do and they're not going to feel overwhelmed by submitting this lengthy writing assignment and then being like, well, I did it wrong. I have to go redo the whole thing. I'm not doing that, right? So by closing the feedback loop, we're providing support and we're guiding them to where we need them to go in a way that's equitable as well, because now you don't have the one student monopolizing your time. Every student is getting attention, okay? Whether they're distance learning or in person. Don't be afraid to experiment, right? So I know this is the year of experimentation because we're all learning new things. And, I can say the same for myself, that even with all these things that I was already doing, I feel like I'm overwhelmed and I feel like I am trying to reinvent the wheel. And we can only do this together. So with that being said, if anybody has any questions, this would be the time to ask them. Also, if you need any of these materials, like I said, I teach global history, so I have this stuff built out already for the entire course. Also, you can use some of my documents just as a template. If you make a copy and then change out the documents or the content, you can kind of get an idea from that. So we will push out the slideshow to everybody so you can access it. Other than that, does anybody have any questions? No? That's good? Okay, any questions online?
Chris, how would you get to the response validation piece? Is that an extension?
No, it's not an extension. All you're going to do is click on the three dots for a
Hey,
question.
Chris, could you
Response
repeat that
validation.
question for everybody that's in person?
Sure. So the question was, how do we get to the response validation piece? And the way that you do that is you click on the three dots. Response validation is only an option if you're doing a short response or a lengthy response. So it's got to be, a written response in order for you to use response validation.
Okay,
So if
thank
you
you.
do a short answer and then click on it, you'll see it there.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions online? Okay, guys, I'm going to hop off now. Thanks everybody for joining us. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.